Okay. All right, let's do chair pose.
Okay.
All right. So, coming to chair pose, and as we're talking about the anatomy behind chair pose in the interplay of the physiology and the kinesiology attached to the idea of the anatomy of movement, and kind of building into that a little bit, and also adding in the elements of pranayama and the bandhas into chair. So suddenly we have a whole lot going on with our chair pose. So, okay, so let's start off. How to get into chair, Uttanasana, or for those who don't pronounce the A at the end, Uttanasana, right? So I want to say that A at the end. Let's come into a mountain. And so the first idea we want is divide your weight evenly between the balls of the feet, right? In your heels as you slowly draw the arches away from the mat. So an interplay of ideas. So as we did our anatomy lesson moments ago about the pelvic floor in trying to create some symmetry as far as weight distribution there goes, not to say that we're ever going to say symmetrical on either side of the body in any given example, but as close as we can get ourselves to it can really serve the practitioner. So as we are finding the symmetrical balance of weight between the left and right side of the body, and as we are lifting up the arches, a couple things are going on. We're engaging our pelvic floor, right? And as we're doing that, we're also engaging our inner thighs, which are commonly underdeveloped for the majority of people in the West. Their inner thighs are underdeveloped. And if that is the case, then we can start to see a little bit more low back pain. So if we look into the purpose of chair and we want to sit back into this chair, the idea of pulling your navel to the spine will help protect it as you engage your abs. So keeping your abs and your core engaged and strong is all part of engaging and strengthening that pelvic floor, which we've talked about moments ago. The idea behind the gaze is soft and before you, your dristi in Sanskrit, is I think on par with, as we were talking about the bandhas, not only when to hold and strengthen, but also when to relax and release. And I think that if we approach chair in this way, in that our body will strengthen through movement, right? It will find stillness through holding and balance, which balancing poses do a great job of helping us with stillness. But then also there's that level of surrender and letting go, and finding that soft gaze can go such a long way. And then arms rise skyward and land alongside your ears. So why did I choose the cue land alongside your ears? Because when your arms are alongside your ears, it's more likely that the shoulders might be able to relax down and back and soften there, right? Rather than crunching up. So that's seen in yoga quite a bit. If the practitioner has all this going on, we have all these cues that we've talked about. We've talked about feet, inner thighs, pelvic floor. We've talked about the core, the abs, right? Now we're onto the arms and what the fingertips are doing. And now it's time to bring our awareness to what's happening with the shoulders. So this is usually one of the last cues I give in an effort to help the practitioners remember, like, where are we now? So as we move into any given posture through cues, we want to add and sprinkle in these qualities. And this is how we go about doing these things. So you should be able to see your toes in this pose, but do not gaze at your feet. So this isn't something that I would say to a yoga class. If you say you should be able to see your toes, everyone's going to look down. And then if you say moments later, but you should look at your feet, then they're going to maybe lose a little trust in the delivery of the class and in the instructor by default. So if you think about understanding it in a way from a teacher's point of view, but not necessarily telling the practitioner why they're doing everything it is they're doing, rather allow that experience to happen over time and be sprinkled into the benefit of your students that come regularly. They'll start to pick up that there's a rhythm here, right? And then maybe after class or even during a workshop, which those are so amazing, or anatomy clinic, we'll be running one of those soon. That would be the appropriate time to really get into it. But ultimately, the reason we do not want them to gaze at the feet is that we're going to flex the cervical spine, the neck. We're going to look down, and that's not what we're going for here. We're going for a clean line between the base of the spine, up the body, nice soft cervical spine, and then extended through the arms and fingertips with the softness in the shoulders. So just a couple of things to consider. So it's just the counter to the shoulders being up too high versus glancing down at the feet, right? It's throwing off the cervical spine and the dance between the lumbar spine, thoracic spine, and cervical spine. So the low back, the mid back, and the neck. What do you think about that? All right, so we want to hug the navel to the spine to protect the lumbar spine. So, this is just a way, this is just the verbiage that we use to help practitioners bring awareness to this area. Because if they're so fixed on how far down can I sit in chair and how high up can I reach my fingertips, they may be losing sight of the purpose behind the posture to start with. And that's really of the center of the mid body. Along with the benefits of a standing posture that has a balance component, which is relaxing and engaging, because the body doesn't want to fall. So like the human tendency will be to clear out whatever clutter is in the mind at the time so that we can zoom in and focus on what's happening right now, which is presence, and presence is yoga, right? And so we can continue on and talk about philosophy for days, but I'll just leave it there for now. We'll pick it up again later. So some modifications for this one. Keep your arms alongside you, or do not sit as steep. And so these are pretty two easy go-tos. This is what I would choose before I changed the alignment of the feet, which hopefully are set up to be hips, knees, ankles, right? So if we widen our stance in this posture, say maybe as we might suggest in a downward facing dog, we widen our stance in this posture, that's quite a bit of load landing on the knees there, and even the hips and ankles too, particularly if there's any kind of injury or ailment going on there. So we really want to find the anatomy of the body with these balanced postures first before range of motion. So that's something really, really to keep an eye on. Anatomy before range of motion, right? So before we make it bigger, let's line it up, kind of like bowling. For those of you that bowled, you line it up, you set it up, and then you put it into movement from there. Okay, so it uses your core, your thigh, your calf, and your back muscles, stretches the arms, shoulders, and chest, stretching and strengthening. So this posture really does so much. If we bring our arms down alongside us, we might not see that same stretch alongside our chest, but maybe if we choose to interlace the fingertips behind the body, right, then we could still have an opening up the chest and a really nice stretch up through the traps and so on. So that could work well, especially if anybody has ever had any rotator cuff injury, ailments, tears, frozen shoulders, common in menopausal, things like that. Any reason the arms don't want to go overhead, totally fine. You can still get so many benefits out of this. In fact, you might even find the practitioner might more readily engage the bandhas and the pelvic floor and the core and the abs piece of this, because the arms aren't distracting them from doing so. So that's just one layer that you consider it. Is we move on. Let me just pull this up in my trusty book here. Into our reference. Here we go. Okay, got it. Which is asana, pranayama, mudra, bandha. Excellent go-to. So we'll take a 2-minute break, and then we'll move on to the anatomy behind that in this lovely resource. I hope that you do enjoy it.